Zack Snyder's Justice League is finally here, and it is a markedly different film than what was released in theaters in 2017 after Warner Brothers brought in director Joss Whedon to finish the movie with various reshoots and edits. But now that Snyder's original vision has been restored, we've cataloged the biggest differences between the two Justice League films. So here's a breakdown of everything that changed from one cut to another, including the format, the story, the heroes, the villains, and how it all wraps up in the end. Let's get the big stuff out of the way first. One thing you could not miss, the theatrical version was rated PG-13, but the Snyder Cut is rated R for violence and some language, and it definitely earns it with tons of blood and both Batman and Cyborg saying "F***." Instead of going standard widescreen like the theatrical release, the Snyder Cut opted for a 1:33:1 ratio, which is why it's presented in that square, full-frame look that Snyder is so fond of. The Snyder Cut score by Thomas Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, was replaced by Danny Elfman's for the theatrical release, but now it's back along with some new songs. Justice League was trimmed down to 2 hours for the theatrical version, but the Snyder Cut clocks in at 4 hours and 2 minutes, divided into 6 chapters. Filling much of the Snyder Cut's hearty runtime is extended versions of many action scenes that had been trimmed down for the theatrical version. The restored action scenes include Wonder Woman stopping the terrorists and obliterating that dude in the hat, Steppenwolf and his parademons have a much bigger fight with the Amazons, and the Mother Box Temple crumbles into the ocean, Reborn Superman taking on the Justice League has some added bits, and the battle below Stryker's Island Penitentiary is beefed up as well. It's notable how the theatrical cut had brighter coloring and the final battle was shaded in red, whereas the new version has Snyder's signature desaturated colors and that red filter is nowhere to be seen. And one of the major things Zack Snyder wanted to do with his version of Justice League was to have the film reflect the darker, more serious tone of his previous movies. Warner Brothers, with the Joss Whedon reshoots, tried to make the film echo the MCU shtick by giving it a less grim vibe and more jokes.
Do you bleed? Oh, something is definitely bleeding.
Those are all excised from the much more dramatic Snyder Cut, although it does still have a sense of humor, but it's more understated as the main tone of the film is the dread of the coming evil that is steadily overcome by the blossoming hope of the heroes.
Who's gonna say it? I'm not gonna say it.
Now that we've covered the basic differences, let's dig into the story and how the heroes of the Justice League themselves differ between the two versions. The theatrical cut started with those cute little podcast kids filming Superman, Superman's funeral, and the world mourning his loss. Batman kicks off the movie already knowing there's an alien invasion and uses a burglar sphere to draw out a parademon. A burglar, mind you, that knows an awful lot about the plot. None of that is part of the Snyder Cut, which starts following Superman's scream, a death knell that reverberates across the DC universe and wakes up the Mother Boxes. This is of vital importance because, as it is explained later in the film, now we know it was the Mother Boxes that signaled to Steppenwolf and his master Darkseid that the planet was vulnerable without Superman there to protect it. After that, we shift to Bruce searching for Aquaman, but at this point he's just on a mission to recruit allies, and it's not until later when Wonder Woman tells him about Darkseid that he learns there are, actual aliens invading the world. The Bruce and Diana arc that formed the spine of the theatrical cut is gone. Instead, the Snyder Cut focuses on the bond forming between the entire team. As for individual character beats, in the Snyder Cut, Batman has a couple tech side quests between his energy-absorbing gauntlets and fixing his flying fox plane, the latter of which Cyborg helps him solve.
It wants to fly.
Batman's full character arc that started in Batman v Superman is now paid off as he went from that lowest of lows to finally being the more hopeful and optimistic one.
Faith, Alfred. Faith.
Plus, we get a ton more Alfred scenes, and those are all priceless.
That's probably enough tea.
All right.
For Superman, most of Henry Cavill's scenes were reshot by Whedon for the theatrical version to better fit that film's lighter tone. And most infamously, Cavill was not allowed to shave the mustache he was sporting while filming Mission Impossible Fallout, so it was digitally removed to questionable success. The theatrical cut had Superman joining the final battle and flying off to save people with Flash, people like that Russian family, but that's all gone. Whereas in the Snyder cut, there's more time spent exploring the aftermath of his return. As Superman walks back through the Kryptonian ship and dons a comics-accurate black suit, there's a new scene where he meets Alfred and he stays put to help defeat Steppenwolf. As for Lois Lane, in the Whedon version of Justice League, Lois mourned the death of Clark and got called thirsty by Martha Kent. Whereas in the Snyder cut, she leaves her job at the Daily Planet and spends her time in grief visiting the Superman Memorial, and she has a much different heart-to-heart with Martha Kent. Although, it turns out that Martha in this scene was actually the Martian Manhunter, who was cut from the theatrical version. He's now added back in, revealing General Swanwick from Man of Steel is actually the shape-shifting hero from Mars. For The Flash, a big Barry Allen scene was cut for the theatrical version, but now it's back so we can see how he saved the woman fated to one day steal his heart, Iris West, and set up the Flash solo movie. The Flash is still the comedic relief and a newbie hero, like in the theatrical cut.
As a bat signal, that's your... Oh, sorry.
But in the Snyder cut, things like him tripping during the underground battle and Batman giving him a little pep talk are no longer there.
Save one person.
Which one?
Moving on to Aquaman, there are a few more Atlantis-centric scenes in Snyder's movie, most notably a previously cut scene of Arthur meeting a long-haired Vulko. Overall, Aquaman is much more wild in the theatrical cut, whereas he's a bit more brooding in the Snyder cut. Also, Mara's accent seemingly has changed between the two cuts, and she gets in on the R-rating fun by trying to bloodbend Steppenwolf. And then we come to Cyborg, whose entire story was rebuilt for the Snyder cut, positioning him as the heart of the story as Snyder originally intended. Overall, it's not just Cyborg's origin story that was missing from the theatrical cut, but also his key role in the breaking of the Unity, the full scope of the abilities he's been blessed/cursed with by the Mother Box, and his relationship with his father, Silas Stone. Silas proves to be a key supporting character in the Snyder cut. As we see more of his work at Star Labs, he lets the League pass during a new sequence where they infiltrate the facility, he sacrifices himself to mark the Mother Box with a heat signature, and he leaves a recorder for Cyborg that becomes the emotional bookend to their father-son story. Silas's lab mate, Ryan Choi, was cut from the theatrical version, but he's back in the Snyder cut. Comics fans know him better as the Atom. That's enough of the heroes, let's dig into the bad guys of the Justice League, starting with the biggest bad DC has to offer, Darkseid. Whereas he wasn't even seen or mentioned in the theatrical cut, Darkseid looms large over Zack Snyder's Justice League. We learn about his history thanks to Wonder Woman, and that leads to a flashback of an epic battle. The theatrical version had replaced Darkseid with Steppenwolf for this battle, but now Darkseid is back as his younger self named Uxas in the comics. The flashback battle is longer, with some new moments of violence where he slices off a Green Lantern's ring hand and is defeated when he takes a big old bloody axe chop in the shoulder from Ares. In the Snyder cut, Darkseid is shown chilling on Apokolips with Desaad and Granny Goodness. We learn about his goal to obtain the anti-life equation, and he even plays a role in the final battle as he witnesses the League's might through a boom tube. We also see a nightmare sequence showing how Darkseid would devastate Earth if he were to turn Superman evil with the anti-life equation. As for Steppenwolf, in the theatrical release, his master plan is all his idea seemingly, and his fear ultimately gets him killed by his own parademons. In the Snyder cut, he's there on a mission for Darkseid. Not to mention he gets a new look and a slightly altered voice. We get a better sense of his motivation. He reports into Desaad and later Darkseid himself, and then he gets sent back to Apokolips in pieces. Finally, let's dig into the major differences of how each Justice League film ended. In the final battle, there are some moments from the theatrical cut that remained in the Snyder cut, such as Bruce leading the parademons away and Arthur surfing down a building, but the Snyder cut has tons of new action beats and plot twists, like Batman breaking through the barrier, Cyborg hacking the Mother Boxes, and Flash racing around and eventually using time travel to save the day. Also, the Justice League finally gets their big slow motion moment where they assemble as a team. Then there's the credit scenes. The Superman vs. Flash race to decide the fastest man alive was exclusive to the theatrical cut. Both films have a stinger with Deathstroke meeting Lex Luthor, but in the theatrical cut, Lex is recruiting him for a new villain team, while in the Snyder cut, he's giving him some key intel to help him take down Batman, which was a setup for the Batfleck solo movie that has since been canceled. The Snyder cut also shows the Martian Manhunter introducing himself to Bruce Wayne. It also offers another glimpse of the nightmare future, featuring none other than Jared Leto's Joker, who was not originally part of the story and was added in reshoots just for the Snyder cut, finally giving these versions of Batman and Joker a proper scene together. This scene is of course a follow-up to the Nightmare Dream sequence in Batman v Superman, and reportedly that apocalyptic reality was going to come to pass in the subsequent installments of Zack Snyder's Justice League trilogy that, according to the director, he has no plans to complete. So the scene is essentially a little peek at what could have been for the DCEU. So those are the biggest changes we found between the two Justice League movies. What changes stood out to you the most? Let us know down in the comments. Be sure to check out our review of Zack Snyder's Justice League, as well as a VFX breakdown of the flashback scene by the folks who made it at Weta Digital. And don't forget to follow and subscribe for more from IGN.